Hi everyone. This time I'm gonna do something a little different, something that I wouldn't have dared to do previously. I'm gonna talk about Nostradamus. Of course, right now everyone is talking about Nostradamus. Every time something significant happens, people try to interpret that event into his book, but usually it doesn't fit. And like, for example, you probably heard that Nostradamus supposedly predicted 9/11, and actually, the the verse for that is actually the verse right here. And as you can see, well, they say that this verse right here would have predicted 9/11 because it talks about a great king of terror coming from the sky. But actually, Nostradamus didn't usually give the precise date, but here he did give the precise date, and as you can see, it's it's July of 1999, not September of 2001. So either you believe Nostradamus had the ability to predict things, or you don't. And if you believe he had the ability to predict things, then clearly this cannot be about September 11. But this is actually, this is an interesting passage here, and the others are interesting as well. So we're going to start here, look at this, because, a lot of people are interested in Nostradamus right now, but a lot of people don't take him serious, precisely because a lot of people have been trying to interpret things into it that don't hold up. And of course, I'm gonna try to interpret it. I'm gonna give you my own interpretation that might not be accurate, but I think my interpretation actually holds up better than the things people try to interpret into it to sensationalize things. Like right now, a lot of people are saying that, oh, Nostradamus would have predicted, the virus, and he does talk about a plague and so on that is actually very similar to the virus right now. But again, that's actually in a part that is dated, but that's dated to the 1500s. So yeah, so people just say, "Oh yeah, okay, this sounds similar," but they don't even look at the dates at all, or they just omit the dates, knowing that people won't actually look at the actual text and won't realize that uh, what they quoted for you to sensationalize it can't be, because it's clearly not the right date. So clearly this passage right here cannot be about September 11. And the passage where he talked about a plague cannot be about the virus right now, because that passage was dated, I think it was 1564, around that time. So clearly not. So, but it's still very interesting. So let's look at this, because this is very interesting, because this really is one of the few places where he actually gives a very precise date. So let's look at this. The year 1999, 7 months. Seventh month. From the sky will come a great king of terror, to bring back to life the great king of the Mongols. As you can see in the French, it actually says Angol-moi. Angol-moi is, it has, like a lot of things with Nostradamus, it can have two meanings, so it can be very symbolic. So you can interpret that as the king of the Mongols. You can also interpret it as the king of Angol-moi, which is actually a city in France. So it can have both these meanings. Just thought I point that out. But the translation of King of the Mongols isn't wrong. You can interpret it that way. That isn't wrong. Um, Before and after Mars to reign by good luck. Avant, après, Mars régner par bonheur. Um, yeah. So, oh dear. Of course, I'm a bit partial, because I know what happened in July of 1999, especially if we're talking about Asia, because, it talks about the king of the Mongols, right? So, um, yeah, so a lot of people won't like what I'm gonna say now, and I didn't usually say that because people were just making fun of me. Um, yeah, but people couldn't figure out what significant thing, what great terror came in July of 1999. And maybe connected with Mongols or with Asia. Actually, a few passages down, and we'll get to that. It talks about Asia again. So obviously something with Asia, a great king of terror, and July of 1999. Yeah, no one could figure out what that could be, even though there is actually something that happened in that month that actually sort of fits. But um, if I tell you what it is, people, at least in the past, people couldn't believe that, and people made fun of me, and yeah. So what happened? Well, the persecution of Falun Gong started in July of 1999. Um, yeah, and it actually makes sense and fits, especially if we go on. Um, so don't laugh at it just yet. Okay? And yeah, this is pretty much the thing that fits best. You can, look up what other things happened in July of 1999. None of them fit as well as the start of the persecution of Falun Gong, actually. And of course I'm a bit partial. I've talked about China and human rights in China a lot. I'm a bit partial, but it fits. So let's go on. So this is actually the reason why I'm only saying this now, because if I had said it earlier, people, and I think I actually did say that. I did try to say it earlier, but like I said, people were just making fun of me. But it's keep in mind, the context about China and human rights in China, because it fits. So let's go on. Um, the present time together with the past will be judged by the great, I don't know that English word, but actually it's translated as joker. Okay, jovalist. Usually that's translated as joker. Um, the present time together with the past will be judged by the great joker. And no, it's not referring to Batman. The world too late will be tired of him, and through the clergy oath-taker disloyal. Well, since I've already, decided on the interpretation that, it might be referring to, human rights in China, um, well, great choker. Well, that's actually well, that was one. Well, he's still alive. That is one of the nicknames of Chiang Zemin, the the head of the Communist Party. Well, at least at that time, around 1999, he was the head of the Communist Party of China, and he's still around, and he still, a lot of people say he still pulls the strings, and he's behind a lot of minorities being persecuted in China to this day. Um, and yeah, one of his nicknames, or one of the names people give him to make fun of him is actually that is Joker, not in the Batman kind of sense, but it's just people make fun of him, and people say people don't really take him serious, and that's why they give him that nickname. The world too late will be tired of him, Yeah, he was replaced now as the head of the Communist Party, but he's still around. He's still pulling the strings, like I said, or at least that's what a lot of people say. And through the clergy oath taker disloyal. Yeah, and because a lot of people are still loyal to him, um, they become disloyal, uh, well, to anything else, especially to other people, and to just basic morality, because he leads them in the persecution of these minorities in China. So they become disloyal to China and to other people because they're loyal to him. So because they're loyal to him, they become disloyal. Um, So, the year of the great seventh number accomplished, it will appear at the time of the games of slaughter. This isn't quite the best translation. When I translated it from French to German, I translated it as it will become apparent at the times of the games of slaughter. And actually, the what it says here in French isn't games of slaughter. It says games of hectacomp. Now, what is hectacomp? Hectacomp, well, it's here it is translated as slaughter. When I translated it to German, I translated it as mass slaughter, which is a bit more accurate. Hectacomp, where mass slaughterings of animals uh, in Olympic stadiums, back, the early Olympics, the ancient Olympics, before they started the actual Olympic Games. I mean, when they started the actual Olympic Games, they had a ceremony where they would bring a lot of animals into the Olympic Stadium and slaughter them, mass slaughter them as a sacrifice to their gods. So that is hectacomp, that act of mass slaughtering animals in Olympic stadiums. And that again fits very well. First off, it fits with the whole theme of China, uh, and it fits very well because obviously this is referring to 2008, the year of the great seventh number accomplished. So just now we were talking about what happened in July of 1999, and now we're down to 2008, obviously, because obviously this is, the year of the great seventh number is 2007, and the year of the great seventh number accomplished is the next year is 2008. What was in 2008? Well, the Olympic Games in China. So again, it fits very well with that whole theme of China, and now that whole hectacomp thing, the mass slaughtering in Olympic stadiums, again makes sense because actually at that time a lot of people were referring to the Olympic Games in China as the games, as the genocide games, because China was committing genocide against minorities. So it fits very well with that hectacomp thingy. And in Olympic stadiums, it fits very well. Not far from the great millennial age. Again, this isn't translated perfectly. It doesn't say millennial age. That's just. Oh no, millennial. Oh, okay. No, okay. Oh, okay, but I've seen a different translation. Well, it's okay. I guess you can translate it that way. Yeah, it says grand age millennium. Yeah, the great millennial age. Okay, but not far from the great millennial age. Huh. The great millennial age. But we already passed the millennial. Well, it might not. Well, see, that's why I wasn't sure, because this isn't necessarily referring to it says millennial age. So this isn't necessarily referring to 2000, because obviously we already passed 2000. But even, of course, if we're already, even if we are already past the year 2000, um, well, it's still close to the year 2000. Obviously, so this could be another hint that he is actually talking about 2007 and 2008, because obviously they are not far from the millennial or the millennium, from the year 2000. They already passed it, but they're still not far from it, not far away from it. But I think this might not even necessarily refer to that. I'm not gonna get too spiritual on you, so I don't. I'm not gonna get into what exactly he might mean with great millennial age if it didn't mean the year 2000. So I'll leave that out. But obviously, it could also mean something along those lines. When the buried will go out from their tombs. Again, I think that fits very well with that theme of human rights in China, of persecutions in China, or just of persecutions in general. Obviously, and it also now becomes apparent that when he talks about mass slaughterings in Olympic stadiums. He's not talking about animals, because you wouldn't make tombs for animals, right? So he is really obviously talking about people being slaughtered, and and then maybe he talks about, maybe this could be hinting at redemption. So that maybe those people that were persecuted, they get redeemed. So maybe, if it really is talking about human rights in China and persecutions and so on, this could maybe hint at those who are being persecuted being redeemed. At least that's my interpretation. So, long awaited, he will never return in Europe. He will appear in Asia. Again, here we have clearly the theme of Asia. Before it was talking about the king of the Mongols. Now again, it actually again talks about a king. Now he will go, very clearly again about Asia. Long awaited, he will never return in Europe. He will appear in Asia. One of the league issued from the great Hermes, and he will grow over all the kings of the East. Yeah. So I'm not gonna go into that too much, because again, this might get too spiritual. Obviously, a lot of people would interpret some kind of Messiah into that. I'm not gonna do that. But obviously it talks about Asia, and yeah, so obviously I seem to be on the right track with my whole Asia interpretation here. And he will appear in Asia, and he will grow over all the kings of the East. So clearly talking about things in Asia. So, again, this was actually one of the reasons why I didn't want to talk about any Messiah here, because you can see how that might be interpreted as the coming of king. He will grow over all the kings. Again, that does sound a little like some sort of messianic figure, and I don't want to go there, because even. Because of course, obviously, that's a very personal thing, and yeah, so I don't want to go there. And some people even think Nostradamus talked about Trump, and some people even view Trump as a messiah, and I actually think that the next passage here is actually talking about Trump, and that's actually one of the reasons why I don't want to go into that whole Messiah thingy, because obviously I don't think Trump is the Messiah. And obviously he didn't mean that. Those are separate passages. Well, they do come one after the other, but obviously this passage here isn't necessarily referring to Trump. It wouldn't make sense, you know. Trump is not in Europe, and he certainly isn't in Asia. So no, this is not referring to Trump. But this passage here might be referring to Trump. Um, the great Senate will ordain the triumph for one who afterwards will be vanquished, driven out. At the sound of the trumpet, and as you can see here in French, it says trump, trump. Well, how do you pronounce that? Do you pronounce it trumpet, or do you not? I think you actually just pronounce it trump, right? So it actually sounds like Trump. Nostradamus actually does it a lot. You know, he uses words that sound the same. You know, so for example, I don't think that he's talking about Mars right here. That doesn't make sense. You know, what would Mars have to do with anything? Before and after Mars to reign by good luck. What does Mars sound like? Well, if we assume he really is talking about China, the way you pronounce Marx in Chinese is actually, well, you guessed it, Mars. Well, very similar to that. You know, you pronounce it Marx. Marx. Well, anyway, it sounds very similar to Mars. So I actually think he's talking about Marx. So if he is talking about, if in the passage about July 1999, he really is talking about, human rights in China and the start of a big persecution in China, then him talking about Marx, which is pronounced Mars in Chinese, makes a lot of sense because, obviously, those persecutions are started by the Communist Party who believe in Marx. But they pronounce it Mars. So he does that a lot. He uses words that sound the same a lot. So this French word here, this sounds like Trump, doesn't it? It really does sound like Trump. And it makes sense. So I don't think Trump is the Messiah. I want to make that clear. But I do think this passage here is actually talking about Trump. The great Senate will ordain the triumph for one who afterwards will be vanquished, driven out. At the sound of the trumpet, Trump, in French, Trump, at the sound of the trumpet of his adherents, there will be put up for sale their possessions, enemy expelled. So again, this fits with the theme of communism, because, the way I interpret it is, and you probably interpret it the same way, the great Senate will ordain the triumph. So this either refers to Trump, no, it couldn't really refer to Biden winning the election. No. Obviously, since we established that Trump means Trump, so obviously this must be, the whole point is trying to, obviously it's talking about Trump, so, well, I just wasn't sure, maybe, this first sentence here wasn't about Trump, but no, obviously this whole passage here is about Trump, and it makes sense, it makes sense. So, if that whole passage is about Trump, then the first sentence here, the great Senate will ordain the triumph, must be referring to Trump winning the 2016 election, for one who afterwards will be vanquished, driven out. So that might be referring to him losing the 2020 election, and and now we're in the future, and and right now it does actually look like, and a lot of left-wing media actually predict that, that he will, a lot of people say that, well, I don't I don't believe he has committed any serious crimes, but the left tries to portray it that way, and they say, yeah, he has committed serious crimes. I'm not sure what those are supposed to be, but they allege that he would have committed serious crimes, and that after Biden becomes president and he loses his presidential immunity, he will be prosecuted for his alleged heinous crimes, whatever those are supposed to be. If you know what those are, please tell me, because I'm honestly don't know what serious crimes he supposedly committed. But a lot of left-wing media actually predict that he will go to jail after Biden becomes president. And I don't actually disagree with that. It might happen, Biden certainly will try to put him in jail. Whether that is legitimate or not is another topic that I won't get into. But yeah, a lot of people on the left do believe that, and so yeah, it makes sense. And a lot of people on the left even start predicting that Trump will then, of course, try to escape. And so this passage makes sense. For one who afterwards, so Trump won in 2016. The great Senate will ordain the triumph. For one who afterwards will be vanquished, driven out. So he lost in 2020, and it appears that he has to go into hiding because the left wants him in jail. So yeah, it might be very possible that he will be vanquished, driven out. Yes. At the sound of the trumpet of his adherents, again, trumpet I already explained that. In French, sounds like Trump. At the sound of the trumpet of his adherents, there will be put up for sale their possessions, enemy expelled. So again, if we're talking, of course, Trump also alleges, the whole time I've been interpreting it in the light of in the light of China, in the light of communism, in the light of communist persecutions. So if we keep it in that light, again, this makes very much sense, and of course, Trump alleges, Trump actually alleges that Biden has connections with China, and I actually also showed you some videos about that, where even high-ranking officials in the Communist Party of China actually say that themselves, that they have a very good working relationship with Biden. So, so it's not only Trump that's saying that, but Trump is, of course, definitely saying that and alleging that Biden has connections with China, and, of course, alleging that, pretty much most of the Democrats nowadays would have connections to socialists. So in that light, this makes sense. So Trump has to flee. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but could certainly be interpreted that way. Trump has to flee, and his adherents have to put up for sale their possessions. Well, that's what the adherents of Trump are afraid of, right? They think that when Biden comes to power, and they think Biden is some kind of socialist, or all of the Democrats are more or less socialists. At least that's what Trump's adherents think. So they think that when that happens, they will lose the rights to their possessions, because that's how they view socialism or communism. Communism does not respect private property. Socialists do not respect private property. So, of course, Trump supporters are afraid that when Biden comes to power and Trump has to flee, so they are afraid that Trump might actually have to flee. And then when Biden comes to power, they're afraid that they will lose their possessions, because they think Biden is a socialist, and they think socialists don't respect private property, and they don't. So yeah, it could certainly be interpreted that way. Yeah, put up for sale. At the sound of the trumpet of his utterance, there will be put up for sale their possessions, enemies expelled. So enemies expelled, again, whoever you regard as your enemy, if you regard Trump as your enemy, then you will certainly connect that with Trump having to flee, with Trump being vanquished, driven out, then that would be the enemy expelled. But it says enemies expelled, so maybe the Trump supporters will be expelled as well, but that doesn't really make sense. So who's this referring to then? Well, my opinion, of course, is, and my opinion is similar to what Trump supporters would actually view it as, because Trump supporters would probably view, they have that whole theory, all the QAnon conspiracy theories and stuff like that. They think that there's this swamp, this deep state government, and they think Trump has been fighting against that deep state, that alleged deep state. I don't necessarily believe in that stuff, but that's what Trump supporters, a lot of, not everyone, but that's what a lot of Trump supporters do think. So enemies expelled, in their view, would then of course certainly refer to Trump nonetheless having, obviously, having lost, but also in a way having won, because apparently he might manage to expel his enemies, which of course according to Trump supporters would be the deep state. So not all is lost, or at least it could be interpreted that way. Of course, I don't know if that's true. I'm just trying to explain it the best I can, and I think it's interesting, right? I mean, as long as you get something out of it, don't take it as the absolute truth. I don't pretend to know the future, and Nostradamus obviously pretended to know the future, and it's interesting, and obviously there's something to it. It's very interesting, right? So okay, let's go on. So now we already started talking about Trump supporters and QAnon, and now it gets even more interesting, right? If you view it in that light, it really kind of makes sense. I'm not big on conspiracy theories. I'm not a conspiracy nut. I'm not into QAnon and all that kind of stuff. I'm not crazy. I don't think the world will come to an end. I'm not like that. And that's why I didn't want to talk about it previously, because the moment you do start talking about it, and the moment you do try to make sense of it, you do inevitably sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist. But I don't think it's like that at all, and I haven't interpreted anything crazy into it, right? I mean, it's just, I'm just trying, I'm just telling you what it says, and together with you guys trying to make sense out of it. I'm not interpreting anything too crazy into it, and I'm not into conspiracy theories. But that being said, now it really does get crazy. 30 adherents of the Order of Cubites. I don't know, how do you pronounce that? Because that's how I would pronounce it, right? The Order of Cubites, I already talked about, the persecution of religious minorities in China. And of course, the Communist Party, every time the Communist Party persecutes a religious minority, they try to, quote unquote, justify that by saying that religious minority, be it Falun Gong, be it the Tibetans, be it the Christians, be it the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, be it the Muslims, no matter what religious minority they persecute, they always try to justify it by saying, oh yeah, that's an evil cult, so we're doing the right thing, which is, we're not persecuting religious minorities. No, we're only persecuting evil cults. Yes, that's the way they're justifying it. And now, since I do believe that Biden does have connections with China, and that there are a lot of politicians who have connections with China and with the Chinese Communist Party, you can see that they are copying their methods at least a bit. So you can see that when a lot of left-wing politicians and so on, and left-wing media try to slander and attack QAnon and and QAnons, followers of QAnon, they actually also, they use the same tactics that the Communist Party used, and they just call them a cult. You can see that a lot. Today I read another article, trying to portray QAnon as a cult leader, and trying to portray the whole QAnon movement as a cult. It doesn't make any sense. Because it's not even religious at all. It's not a religion. So, at least, when communist China persecutes religious minorities, those aren't cults either, but at the very least, they were religions, right? But QAnon isn't even religious at all. So calling it a cult, it doesn't make any sense. And it just goes to show you that they just use the same methods the Communist Party in China uses to slander and attack their enemies. So in that light, this sentence here makes sense, and it becomes obvious what it might, I'm not saying it does, but what it might refer to, and it makes sense, I'm not saying, the interpretation I'm giving you is like the absolute truth. I don't know that. I don't know the future, but at least it's consistent, it makes sense, it makes sense with the dates, it makes sense with the names, and since we already gotten down that road of interpreting it in the light of what's happening in China, in the light of what's happening with Trump, then, him talking about Q rights now, again, makes sense, because a lot of Trump supporters are Q rights, and even him calling it the order of Q rights now also makes sense, because we've already established, well, obviously they're not an actual cult, but they do get called a cult. So, yeah, so obviously I think this is referring to QAnon. And, well, to QAnons, to the followers of QAnon. 30 adherents of the Order of Q-Rights banished their possessions given their adversaries. So again, this ties in with the paragraph here, where it talks about the followers of Trump, and them, being expelled, being vanquished, being driven out, and their possessions put up for sale. So this makes sense. So here again, it talks about the possessions of the adherents of the Order of Q rights. So obviously, QAnon supporters are also Trump supporters. So it makes sense that these are the same. So the Trump supporters lose their possessions and get expelled, and so do the QAnon supporters. They also lose their possessions and get expelled. Why? Because this is both referring to the same type of people, because QAnon supporters are usually Trump supporters, and Trump supporters are usually QAnon supporters. Or a lot of them are. So this makes sense, So I'm not saying this is what Nostradamus meant, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Right? I mean, it all ties in, It's consistent. 30 adherents of the Order of Q rights banished their possessions given their adversaries. So again, this might tie in to what I said about the fear that a lot of Trump supporters have that when Biden comes to power, he will implement communism or socialism or some form of that, or will work towards that goal. And what is that goal? That goal is the abolition of private property, which ties in with them losing their possessions, and them being banished. That makes sense. That's something that could happen. And it's not saying that of course, I said before, it can't happen that all the Trump supporters get expelled. It would just be too many. But here it limits the amount. It just says 30 adherents of the Order of Cubites. So yeah, so I think that's possible. That 30 of them could get expelled, could get banished, and their possessions confiscated. That's possible, right? Makes sense. All their benefits will be taken as misdeeds. Again, this is exactly the feeling that Trump has, that Trump supporters have, that QAnon supporters have. They feel, they feel that Trump has done so many good things. I don't necessarily agree with that. It's just, Trump supporters obviously think that. They think, oh, Trump has done so many good things during his time as president. But no matter what good things he does, it always gets twisted into misdeeds, right? So yeah, that's exactly the feeling they have. All their benefits will be taken as misdeeds. Yeah. Fleet dispersed, delivered to the Corsairs. Okay, well, that's obviously something in the future that obviously I don't know about yet. So, yeah, but okay, so this is obviously the next thing that's gonna happen. So, yeah. Well, just look at it yourself and gain your own understanding of it. It's fascinating.